Now, something that interests me about a lot of countries around the world, mainly places like the UK and especially even more so the US, is the situation with debt. Whether we're talking national debt or household debt, but I really want to talk household debt in this scenario because I like to make a lot of my stuff based on, my life experience, perhaps personal experiences and the things that affect the average everyday person, right? So, places like the UK, I believe that the average debt per person works out to be over £60,000. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Now, a lot of that comes down to student debt, but also let's not forget the fact that people have things like credit cards and unnecessary expenses like car finances. Now, a big thing for a lot of people is also going to be the mortgage. But here is the thing, right? In places like this, the debt that people personally have, the debt that the nation has, is staggering, right? And it's something that really worries me going forwards because I think we must, and of course, I'm not an economist or a financial expert at all, but I think we must be headed for some sort of crisis on this front, right? Because people already in places like the UK at least are living on a very tight budget. A lot of people are. A lot of people bought into things that are now unviable. And what I mean by that is, you have a credit card or you have a mortgage, the rate got hiked massively. Now, a mortgage that you perhaps could have comfortably afforded, or even worse, if you could have just afforded it, you are now possibly in trouble, or you could be in trouble. So you're either working harder or you're, I don't know. Then we've got credit cards and obviously things like car finance, right? Everything's on finance, everything's in debt, everyone's in debt. Now, why could this be a problem, in my opinion? Because what happens in the end? What is the result of this? Because let's give an example of a credit card, right? If people are making, admittedly, a very bad financial decision, where a credit card comes in and your credit card rate is between, let's say, 5 and realistically 25%. 25% interest a month. How do you ever go about paying that down or back or finishing it off, right? It's almost unsustainable. And people are barely just making by, barely just paying the mortgages, barely just paying the car finance as it is. Now, I will admit, people do not help themselves in this regard. They buy things that they just don't need to show off to people who just don't care. It's one of the things that I'm glad that I don't have that feeling to prove that I'm someone to something. I don't care. I don't need a new car on finance. I don't need to buy my holidays on the credit card or whatever because it's a scam, it's a rip off at the end of the day. But here is the thing: a lot of people do this, and with that being the backstory, with a lot of people barely making ends meet, what happens when we, I think, almost inevitably have some kind of economic crisis, which you could make the argument that we are slowly bubbling to right now, in the fact that people's personal incomes are squeezed to death, right? There's a death grip on people's personal incomes and their disposable incomes as well. So that's one problem. But if the economy really tanks and job layoffs happen and that kind of thing, people are going to find themselves in an unpayable amount of debt, payable amount of debt, just completely undoable. And even when prices continue to rise, what cutbacks are going to be having to make? What cutbacks are going to have to be made? Now, I will admit, I think that this is probably the flip side of the cost of living crisis, because a lot of people complain about how high the cost of everything is, and it is. But then the same people are living paycheck to paycheck, not because they're broke, but because they're living an unsustainable lifestyle, paying for things that they just don't need. Well, with that being said, it's just the way things are here. People are encouraged to do it because think about it. A company can sell you a car for £25,000, or they can sell you a car for £25,000 plus interest on monthly payments. Companies want you to be in debt. And also, when you're in debt, you're working for your assets. You have to pay them off. Everything that I've got is paid off. Minus my phone bill. The phone itself is paid. I just pay for the service. And my gym membership. These are my recurring payments. My car is paid, insurance on my car is paid, living expenses for the next year are paid. I just want to do things properly, but a lot of people don't have that financial education, and I can't blame them for it. We're in a system that encourages making bad financial choices because the rich get richer off it. But what is going to happen? Well, I think it's going to be terrible. If you remember the 2008 crisis, of course, that was caused by a lot of debt. But people say, well, that would never happen again. The economic climate now is, I think, undeniably more worrying. More debt. Debt is being given out like left, right, and centre. It's shocking how easy it is to acquire a lot of debt. Mortgages with payments of what, 1% down. Those people can't afford to pay that mortgage. It's not going to happen. It can't happen. 1% down. It's unrealistic. Even 5% down. Are you really able to afford it? I got a message from my banking app, and I thought, well, I'd see what my eligibility calculator is. What kind of debt can I take out? As a 21-year-old business owner and part-time worker, these are my two professions, let's say. Right now, I work part-time, very low hours, and I run my own business. Two things that arguably are very unstable. The kind of person who really, I will admit, right, if I was a bank, I wouldn't want to give very much money to. You know how much money I can loan out from the bank? I'll tell you how much. £38,000. I could take it in cash like that. Go buy a luxury car, go buy whatever. Now, I don't intend to do that at all. I don't need the money, and I don't want to get myself in debt just yet. I would only get in debt if I can see a way of making money off it, and it has to be almost certain and steadfast that I can make that money. But here's the thing. Banks are giving out money left, right, and centre. Student loans, money left, right, and centre. Car finance, giving out money. Credit cards, giving out money to people who can't afford it, to people who are just making buy as it is. And of course, this is worrying because, I don't want to make a full economic breakdown video here. That's not my intention, and I don't have the education to do that. I will admit my shortfallings. But how can anyone tell me that today's world is sustainable? Not just on the fact that I think that if we have some sort of a financial crash, people are going to be in trouble, but also on the front of, this is not a way to live. What happens in the end? Are we going to be passing on generational debt? Where does this go? Where does this go? Everything on finance, everything on credit, everything on mortgage, everything on buy now, pay later. People are racking up ridiculous amounts of debt. It's all due to the credit cards, and if it's money, if it's not real money, I had a stack this fat and now I've got a stack this thin. It's just funny money. People don't even acknowledge that it's real cash a lot of the time. And that's worrying, I think, at least. I think that's very concerning. And I don't know what the end game is here, but it's another front where I just think the economy is just not real in a lot of ways. In a lot of ways. Look at how much of the UK's economy is propped up by students. Of course, a lot of them are international, to be fair, but a lot of goods and services that people buy they can't afford, and when people are buying stuff that they can't afford on such a scale, you can't tell me it's not unsustainable. You can't tell me that this is sustainable. People taking out credit cards to buy cars, or even taking out credit cards or finance to just pay their rent. What is going to be the end game of this? It's another game where I wonder, what is the end game of this situation? Now, if anybody has a proper financial knowledge or understanding, let us know in the comment section. Or if you want to have a chat about it, let's talk about it down there too. I just don't know. I think it's going to be interesting to see, but probably not very fun. The good thing that I can say is, thank God, I and my immediate family haven't really got anything on finance or credit, and I'll finish that one there.